Welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast. Our next guest is a former commander in the U.S. Navy. He is a JAG officer. He has extensive background and knowledge in national security and constitutional law, and he is currently the General Counsel for Citizens Defending Freedom. And with that, we're honored to be joined by Jonathan Hullihan. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Tally.
Hey, absolutely, man. I sincerely appreciate you coming on to do this quick Q&A, a little rapid fire here. I know you were on Fox News yesterday. You've been posted all over the internet, all over TV. You are a hot commodity right now, and I'm honored for you to take some time to sit down with me today and our fellow patriots and listeners out there that are listening on a national stage right now to hear what you got to say.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this issue. It's very important that folks understand what's actually going on.
Plain and simple, the federal government has failed to do their job. Governor Abbott has been asking for 3 years to get this border secured and to get the help of the federal government in there to protect the sovereignty of not only Texas, but the United States of America. When the government fails to do their job, the state does have a right to step up and fill that void, correct?
Well, we got to get back to the basics, get back to the beginning of this nation. And when states, the original colonies, ratified the Constitution following the Constitutional Convention, they gave up some of their sovereignty. They gave up some of their rights as sovereign states to join this new federal general government under the U.S. Constitution. They entered into a constitutional republic. The federal government has certain enumerated powers. The founders never would have given up their security and their sovereignty if it came to a point when the federal government would fail to do basic duties that were enumerated and understood they were supposed to do, like protecting the citizens, the safety of the citizens. And I think the key takeaway from this issue is, look, this is not about immigration. This is not about your legitimate claims of asylum where people want to seek a better life. This is about the national security of the United States of America. This is about protecting our citizens, our lives, our liberties. It's about the rule of law, upholding the rule of law. It's about a law-based order. It's about our constitutional republic and making sure that the checks and balances are in place. And what's happening is, look, Congress has advocated a lot of their duty under the Constitution. Generally, the Congress has to pass these laws for immigration. The executive branch is just taking advantage of the opportunities they've given them. They've abused the parole system under the executive branch. They've abused large portions of Title VIII. They now have asylum claims that are made via apps. The immigration courts, which actually fall under Article 2, have been backlogged for years and years and years. And what you've seen is just this mass migration of people, almost migrant warfare, have come up through the southern border. And when that happens, of course, you have transnational criminal organizations and other bad actors are taking advantage of that, if not causing some of that through, if they control the ports of entry and they're causing people to go outside of the ports of entry, and then we are allowing them to come into our country, breaking the law, but they're able to get in anyway. There is no lawful immigration system. It's just a free-for-all. So to answer your question, yes, the states have a right to protect their sovereignty, protect their borders under the Constitution. Under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, they have a right to repel invasions. The Guarantee Clause, Article 4, Section 4, they have a guarantee from the federal government that they would keep them free from invasion. The Compact Clause, they can repel these emergencies for emergent threats. All of these things were envisioned by the founders that the states maintain their sovereignty, could protect their citizens' lives and liberties. And that's just has not been happening. And you see stories, sad stories time after time about the fentanyl overdoses. I mean, there was a bipartisan report on the opioid trade that came out from the Congress a few years ago that said 90% of the synthetic opioids, fentanyl, is coming up from the cartels in northern Mexico, 90%. And of that, most of those chemicals and precursors are being manufactured in communist China. So communist China is manufacturing those precursors, those chemicals. They're being put together in northern Mexico, and then they're being shipped across the border. That is drug warfare. A whole generation of Americans have been completely decimated. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have overdosed on the fentanyl epidemic. Not to mention human trafficking, human smuggling. These are all activities conducted by paramilitary organizations and cartels that are using the same lines of effort of smuggling drugs across with migrant warfare. That's all entering our country. So all of these things are kind of converging at the same time. And then you have the administration is just literally letting everybody in. And with that, it's the cartel criminal activities coming in with it. So yes, there's an absolute right to protect Texas. Every county in the United States is now a border county because everyone in this country has been affected in some fashion or form from criminal activity, fentanyl, this white space of criminal activity that's been created over our border. It's out of control, and the states have a duty and a responsibility to step up and do something about it.
Sure. Now, legally speaking, you've used the word invasion several times. I just want to know legally, because I know this is going to be going to court, and they're going to be talking about just that clause that you had talked about when it comes to stopping an invasion. Now, what constitutes an invasion?
Well, that's a really good question. I've looked this up, actually. I looked at the dictionary from 1775. An invasion means to, as intended by the founders and the framers, because when I look at these things in the Constitution, I look at, I'm an originalist. I look at what the plain meaning of the word was when they wrote the Constitution. It means to repel or stop a large mass or force. I can't cite the exact dictionary I found that out of. It was one of two dictionaries available. It means to repel, stop a large force. It didn't say military force. It just said a large force. And again, if you look at this from the context of migrant warfare, this is gray zone conflict. I don't want to get too much into this. A lot of your listeners will understand this. This is really unconventional warfare, gray zone conflict. Adversaries, whether it's transnational criminal organizations, it's other foreign nations that are taking advantage of the situation to kind of weaken not only American resolve, but cause political strife within the United States. It's really subversion and sabotage operations, I think, kind of rolled into some of this. At least some elements of that, non-state actors are rolled into that. That is an invasion. Like I said before, this isn't about immigration. There are legitimate asylum seekers that we would recognize under U.S. law, but unfortunately, it has just been taken to a whole new level where opportunities. I'll just go ahead and say it. For example, in South America, you have huge Chinese fishing fleets. I mean, massive. Hundreds of ships are going within the special economic zones of the South American countries that have traditionally held all the fishing activities within the kind of range of the coast. So for generations, you've had fishermen. Their father was a fisherman. Their father's father was a fisherman, etc. That their sole income was to fish and bring in an income for their family. Well, okay, China has fished out most of the fish where they have to go further and further out. So what is that person to do now? They're forced to either work for the cartels or do some other activity. And ultimately it just forces them north to the United States. So it's a complex problem with many factors, whether, China is intentionally doing that, but that's a result of what's happening. And then cartels or whoever else are using some of that, taking advantage of that to use them as coyotes and ferry people, or just other criminal activity that's coming up along with that mass migration. So it's migrant warfare as part of the invasion.
For quite some time now, I have witnessed on TV, and I've even had friends down on the border see it with their own eyes, the Border Patrol cutting the wire and getting loaders up underneath the wire and allowing entry in from a lot of these areas, just across the river, and up an embankment, and they are helping facilitate the movement, if you will, from Mexico into the United States. And again, we have 160 different countries coming in through this southern border. Now, no sane nation would ever allow their government to go in there and facilitate this type of mess, if you will. I'm talking cut and wire and removing everything that they possibly can, that the state of Texas is trying to do to to protect the state's sovereignty. The bad actors here, I just can't see this being done by the federal government in a for the good of the country, if you will. I can't see this type of action being done to protect the American people. It's almost as if they're doing it on purpose. And if they are doing it on purpose, what's the motivation behind this, Jonathan?
Look, I don't have any facts that would get to the intent of why they're doing it. It's not a good result for the American people. When I look at this problem set, I look at non-state actors and I look at state actors that may not have the United States' best interest in heart, and whatever they can do to subvert, cause political strife, or otherwise stoke issues within the United States, kind of drain our manpower as far as the southern border, looking at while Customs and Border Patrol agents are dealing with this mass of humanity, or they're, trying to get people out of the river. Okay, you've got other activity happening up the river, right? You have runners, gotaways that have, high value packages, for lack of a better term, whether they're smuggling in people that are on the terrorist watch list, whether they are pushing in fentanyl, arms, whatever they're doing. Some of those activities where this mass comes in, there's something else happening down the river or in another place. So it's just, it's really, it's like military tactics in a lot of sense. So I don't know if the administration understands that, or they just want to be, social justice warriors and be compassionate and open the doors to everyone. But when you put non-citizens above the rights of citizens, and then you've kind of created this international norm of everyone can come, and then you have other non-government entities that are providing all these resources to people right away, that in a lot of terms, you've seen stories out there with veterans that are being left homeless. You and I both know, there's a generation, not only back to Vietnam, but now currently, there's a generation of veterans that have significant mental health issues because the United States broke them, sent them to places, had them do the things that were required to do. They did their duty, but some of those issues caused some mental trauma. And we have homeless veterans on the street that are not getting the treatment they need because the government is putting resources in other places. Mm-hmm. That angers me greatly. And we need to take care of our veterans before we're taking care of folks from other countries. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, I don't know why they're doing it. I just know that the state of Texas has a right to, in all states really, under the Compact Clause and under the federal Constitution, to have a right to stop it and protect our citizens. I wish the federal government would do more. I wish Congress would do more. I wish Congress would actually get together and come up with some laws on the books to rein in the abuse of the parole program, rein in some of the abuses under Title VIII. They can really clean up a lot of this stuff if they pass laws. If you give the executive branch all this leeway and you come up with laws, and then you let the regulatory, the administrative state interpret those, you're going to get this. You're going to have encroachment from the executive branch into the legislative branch if you don't clarify those rules. So Congress really, really needs to strengthen some of these laws and really have a clear intent on what these laws mean. They can clean up some of these laws on asylum, on economic asylum. Not to mention, many of these asylum rules, they're supposed to claim asylum in the first country past their country of origin. So, mm-hmm. These folks are going past multiple countries before they even claim asylum. So I don't know how those are even legitimate asylum claims.
Sure. You said, hey, we need to pass more laws, whatever. I think there's plenty of laws on the books to at least.
Oh, I know. I agree with you.
Secure our borders. But
I guess to say, how do you stop the executive branch is not pass more laws, but clarify the laws on the books that, hey, you can't just say, executive branch, that you're going to parole somebody for 8 years until they get an asylum hearing. You have to parole somebody for these legitimate purposes. And then you have to clarify those laws, because like I said, they've left some gray zone not pass the law, clarify the law, and that would, in theory, rein in the executive branch. So, look, I don't want more laws. I want to clarify and enforce the laws that are on the books.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and really, again, there shouldn't be a new law that says we need to protect our sovereignty and our border. That should be
absolutely. Hey, we have all the law we need on that. It's called the U.S. Constitution. So that's the law. I agree with you. I just to clarify, how can you protect the executive branch from within the government?
Yeah, that's the first box that's checked. And
that's why Abbott, he cited those clauses in his letter.
Yeah.
Governor Abbott's been very methodical. Remember, Governor Abbott was former Texas Attorney General. He was on the Texas Supreme Court. He has been very methodical with this. He's basically, in my opinion, been building a case. He's really tried to do everything he could under Operation Lodestar and everything else, telling the federal government, hey, do your job, do your job, do your job. But when, it's kind of the last straw, if you can't even put up wire to at least push people towards port of entry. Remember, you're supposed to enter at ports of entry to claim asylum. I mean, all this entry between, none of that's all unlawful activity. That's all unlawful. As you articulated, we don't need new laws. We need to enforce the ones that are on the books.
Sure. And that's going to really bring me to my next question here, Jonathan. It feels as if the energy has shifted in the room. It's like the silent majority is no longer being silent about what's going on in our country. I think we're getting to the point there where enough is enough, and it's got to get bad enough for people to start standing up and to start getting a little bit more vocal about what's going on, because a lot of people in this country see our country headed right down into the pits of hell. And we're not going to stand by idly and watch our country blow up in this massive inferno and kiss this beautiful land and this beautiful country and the best country on the face of this planet goodbye. And I'm not going to stand by and just watch it happen and not try to do anything about it. This is why I have this podcast. I try to get good information out to the general public so people can make their own sound decisions and draw their own conclusions on what's going on, so we can vote accordingly in this nation and to keep that liberty bell here at home ringing. Now, look, all eyes are on the southern border right now. All eyes are on Texas. All eyes are in this showdown, in this standoff, very Tombstone-esque. I'm your Huckleberry. Say when, man. We've got Biden, we've got Abbott, and it is a dueling match here. Who will cave in first, or is all this just grandstanding? The way I see it on social media is that there's people getting fired up out there, and they're thinking, oh, there's going to be a civil war, and we're going to have all this stuff happen. And today was going to be that day where that big duel was going to be taking place. And it seems as if, the ratchet, is getting tighter and tighter, but I don't see a lot of movement.
No, I mean, I certainly, look, people are very passionate about this issue. I definitely don't advocate for any kind of political violence or whatnot on this. But what you're seeing is very encouraging as far as the states kind of realizing, hey, wait a minute, we are a sovereign within a sovereign. When our country we are a constitutional republic. Now, for 100 years, you've seen that slip away. You've seen the checks and balances. You've seen the balance of the state authority versus the federal government, and the continued strengthening and centralization of the federal government versus the states kind of losing their sovereignty, losing their ability to govern and protect their people without some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. telling them what kind of toilet they can purchase or what kind of stove they can buy. It's not what the founders intended. So I think from like a macro approach, what's encouraging to me is that states are kind of taking back their power. They're realizing, hey, wait a second, we can take back our power. And if you look at, there's been a series of decisions in the Supreme Court. In the mid-1980s, there was a case that developed what's called the Chevron Doctrine, which really gave a lot of deference to bureaucrats, right? The administrative state. I think that personally, I think the administrative state is the problem because they're really unelected and unaccountable, and they've kind of run amok. They've taken the laws passed by Congress and they really interpret them, and they basically do what they want. They enforce these EPA standards, they enforce these crazy standards, they change the rules by going through this kind of nebulous rulemaking process, and normal Americans don't even know what's going on. Look at Title IX for a perfect example. They've proposed rules under Title IX that boys can play girls' sports, and boys can use girls' bathrooms under Title IX. That wasn't a law passed by Congress. The Education Amendments of 1972 under Title IX did not intend for boys to play basketball or volleyball on a girls' team and hurt other girls or invade their privacy. That was passed to give girls equal opportunity to play sports. That was passed so more girls' sports programs could flourish. But you have the current administration saying, no, we think that gender kind of ideology or gender identification, well, that's what Congress meant in 1972. So they've used this administrative state to make these rules, and Congress didn't pass a law on that. So that's just an example of how this administrative state, the bureaucracy, is passing rules and making changes outside of the legislative process, outside of the direct democratic representation of your congressman, and they're making these changes to the law. Same thing's happening in immigration. So I'm encouraged that people are waking up to this. The states are realizing that there's more power, that more sovereignty. The courts, like I said, the Chevron doctrine, there's a few cases up for review now where they're saying, oh, wait a minute, you bureaucrats have way too much power. We're not going to give you so much power. We're not going to give you so much deference. You have to really articulate what Congress meant by this. To be able to get outside of that. And I'm also encouraged by, people like you. Everyday people are starting to wake up and realize that bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. are making these decisions, radical decisions that are starting to affect my life. I mean, our federal government was not set up so these large questions are, making all these changes are going to affect all these Americans every day. Washington, D.C. was not set up for that. It was set up for these certain enumerated powers. But when you have a bureaucrat making decisions that little Johnny in nowhere, Oklahoma, is now playing volleyball with Susie and hurting other girls because of their strength and size, like that's a decision that was made by some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. Those decisions should be made to the states, to the people, and not to Washington, D.C. So I think people are waking up to that, and that's encouraging. I don't know if I answered your question. I went way off topic there, but no. I just kind of want to show there's this fourth branch of government that is really encroaching on our liberty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of government overreach. And the point where I was trying to make is that since 2020, the American people are tired. It's one thing after another, after another, after another, after another. You've touched on some of the topics. It's just like literally we're being inundated every single day from top, bottom, left, right. It doesn't matter. We don't even know up from down anymore. We don't know left from right. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what's going. People are confused. Kids are confused. Everything's going on. And I think, again, people are like, we're done here with everything. And they see finally somebody in America is standing up against a radical regime, if you will. And they're looking at Abbott as, okay, now I can take all of my aggression that I've had for the last 3 years and put it on the back of this guy and say, now we can have a voice again. Abbott is going to be my voice. It doesn't matter if he's the governor of Texas, he's going to stand up and face this, like I said, this regime, this dangerous regime that reminds me a lot of communist China. I mean, look at all this Green New Deal and all this stuff that we got going on, like you were talking about. You can't get that stove. You must have a electric lawnmower. you need to have an electric car. Oh, you can't drink coffee anymore because of carbon emissions. It's like, what's going on? It's like,
I mean, the founding fathers would be losing their minds if they knew that decisions on your mode of transportation were being made out of Washington, D.C. None of these decisions were ever meant to be made, like I said, in Washington, D.C. These are local decisions. And the EPA, the rise of the administrative state, the failure of Congress to check the administrative state and clarify these rules has really go back to Woodrow Wilson in the 1920s or before 1920. He created this panel of experts, right? Like the federal bureaucracy was Woodrow Wilson basically, and said, look, Congress, they're too busy doing Congress things, and the American people, this is Woodrow Wilson, they really don't understand these complex issues. So I need a panel of experts to make these decisions for the American people, because they just don't know. And you know what? We know better. So this rise of the bureaucratic state really started then, where the bureaucrats, I mean, talk about deep state. I mean, the deep state is just the bureaucrats, the civil servants that just hang on, and it doesn't matter who's president. They're like, hey, you know what? I don't like that guy. I'm just not going to do that. Or I'm going to enforce the rule this way. Like, that's kind of what the deep state is. It's just this bureaucracy that's just grown. It's just massive bureaucracy that Congress can't control, or in the executive branch can just put as a political appointees and they just go. So that's such a problem. What's encouraging is people are realizing with Governor Abbott, like, hey, wait a second. The states have all this power. The states have this authority. Yeah. Your local governance is actually more powerful. Your county governance, those decisions that are made at your local level, your school board. Look, a bill doesn't get passed in Austin because of the Reader Act or whatever. It's under court review. There's an injunction, whatever it is. Everybody's upset. Oh, I spent all this time lobbying. Okay. Your school board has the decision under precedent, under the PICO decision, to decide if something is pervasively vulgar or of little educational value. Your school board. So why are we putting all this time and effort into a congressman or in the state rep? Hopefully pass this law. That's all very important. But your school board has authority. Your local commissioner's court has authority. Get involved at the local level. Obscenity statutes that are harmful to children, whether we're talking about drag shows or whatever else, things that are happening to our kids, those things can be enforced at the local level. Those are laws on the books already. So people just need to get educated, get informed at the local level. That's why with Citizens Defending Freedom, I'm really love the position I'm in, because we have chapters all Florida, Georgia, Texas, and now we even in Michigan, where we're really looking at the problem from a local level. And I explain this, again, for kind of more of a military audience, probably. If you look at what's happened through the progressives or anybody else, they've really used lawfare, right? What is lawfare? They're using all means, through the law, through loopholes, through policy at the local level, whether we're talking about getting mail-in ballot applications approved without going through the legislative body, whether we're talking about sending threatening letters to school boards saying, we're going to sue you if you do X, Y, or Z. And then the school board's like, oh, no, we can't afford a lawsuit. We better just do what they want. That's lawfare, okay? Mm-hmm. The reason I like CDF is I literally feel like I'm practicing counter lawfare. So, oh, that's happening in your school district? Well, actually, here's the real status of the law. Or, why don't you go ahead and enforce your obscenity statutes that you have on the books? Or why don't you, as a school board, think about it? Is this pervasively vulgar? Does this material reflect our community values in our school? Oh, it doesn't? Does it have educational value? No, it doesn't. Oh, well, the Supreme Court has said that as long as it's viewpoint neutral, you can remove that material. That's not a First Amendment violation. So go ahead, do it. And if they don't, they'll find a new school board member. So just kind of empowering and educating at the local level is really important. And the same thing for the border. We've had 51 counties in the state of Texas pass these border resolutions that either declare an invasion, declare an emergency, or support the border counties. Sheriff Cohen, Kinney County, and those guys down there really started that. Now there's 51. Okay, that's a swelling of support from the county level. The counties are reaching out to Governor Abbott and kind of expressing that, hey, we have a problem here. We have fentanyl pouring in our communities. We have crime. We have people overdosing. We have just massive of activity that's happening because we don't have a secure border. So that is coming up from the local level, going to Governor Abbott. I would suggest, and I would submit to you that that provides Governor Abbott top cover under our system, right? Department of Justice sues him. Hey, I'm chief executive of the state of Texas. I am the commander in chief of the Texas military forces. I have 51 counties telling me that they have an emergency. What, am I to sit by and just let it happen? No, of course not. So that just provides him more evidence. Like I said, Governor Abbott's very pragmatic. He builds a case where he can say, look, I have a problem here and I'm going to address it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Now, I got one final question for you, and then I'll let you run. Crime, garbage, infectious disease, third world is bringing third world here with them. And I know I've seen it here where I live in Houston, and I know many other people across the country are experiencing exactly what I'm seeing here in the greater Houston area. Now, what is the end game here? I've heard anywhere between 5 to 20 million illegal aliens have come in over the last 3 years. Now, I know that's a large span, but let's just say 8 million on the low end. That's like a dozen major U.S. cities. Now, you can't just take all that in at once, but we have. And now sanctuary cities are no longer wanting to be sanctuary, and they're saying, holy cow, we can't do this anymore. Stop. And now the people in these sanctuary cities are saying, yeah, we can't do this anymore either, because now you're taking all of our resources, all of our nonprofits, all of our food, all of our shelter, all of our clothes, and whatever it may be. That's all non-existent now to the American people. What is the end game here? And can our country sustain an additional 8, 10, 15, or 20 million people over the course of this 3 to perhaps 4 year period during this Biden administration?
Well, I think that if you look at the history of the United States, there's been times where we've had lawful immigration, right? We've absorbed, whether it's the Irish or the Chinese or whoever, there's been lawful immigration that has come into this country. The difference, I think, is it was lawful. They had certain quotas, certain numbers. And why did they do that? Because assimilation in the United States is very important. Understanding our system of governance, our appreciating the value of the United States. And I'm not saying that folks coming over don't appreciate that, but assimilation is very important. You really immerse yourself in the culture, the American culture. You immerse yourself in the language, our systems of laws, what it means to be an American, appreciate that. And when you have this massive humanity, I think it's very challenging to do that. And as a nation, you lose some of your identity, right? When folks come over and it's some kind of hyphenated American, you're no longer an American, you're this, you're that, you're the other. Mm-hmm. You lose that national identity. You lose that value of what it means to be an American. People don't stand up for the pledge. People don't do X, Y, or Z. They don't appreciate what it means to be an American. And I think that's the thing that makes me the most upset about unchecked immigration is well, I'm upset about a lot of things. The crime and all that is and the deaths and the resources being sucked away. That's important, but just the idea that a lot of folks are not going to appreciate and earn the right to be an American, understand what it means that we are the greatest country in the history of the world. And our forefathers, so many of them, gave up, everything, on the beaches of Normandy, on the battlefield of Shiloh, wherever, they died for our freedom in the Battle of Fallujah, Afghanistan, jungles of Vietnam, the hills of Korea. It goes on. And, this liberty that we have was earned in blood. And people need to respect that and understand that. And it makes me sad that just a massive humanity can just come in without earning the kind of right through lawful means to become an American. Yep. That bothers me. So
absolutely.
I don't know if that answers your question, but it really bothers me.
No, it bothers me to no end as well, to come in and to step on our flag and to desecrate our flag and to laugh and to parade around and to litter and to basically just the stuff I'm seeing is so disrespectful to our country and everybody, like you said, that has bled for this country, the service, the sacrifice for generations to keep that Liberty Bell here at home ringing, the sacrifice. People don't understand it until they're in it. And that's why there's less than 1% right now in the United States, and has been forever, that are serving in the armed forces. And I mean, it's go time. You know, it's like, if we don't stand up and fight for the good of the country and come together as one people, as Americans, we will lose our country. And some say it may be too late, but I still have hope. I have faith for the future.
Look, Brian, I mean, we're good, man. Like, we're Americans, and
yeah,
you know, we're Texans, so not going to happen. I mean, we're going to fight to the last breath to make sure that liberty continues. I think it's frustrating, right? It's very frustrating. But I feel like if there's any, like you said, if there's any kind of things to build more confidence, it's swinging the other way. States are realizing they have some authority, and it's swinging back the other way. More people are waking up, especially with shows like yours that are kind of just educating folks and letting folks know that, you know, you do have a voice. Our state and local officials do have some authority, that they can check some of these abuses and usurpations of power, and they need to exercise it lawfully and peacefully and do the best they can. You know what I'm saying? So,
yes, sir.
But I think the biggest takeaway to me, and I want folks to understand, is this is not about immigration. I mean, this is all about national security, and you cannot have unchecked open borders with gotaways, people on the terrorist watch list, fentanyl. You know, the Chinese Communist Party has obviously built infrastructure in multiple cities through corporate espionage, other espionage in our research facilities, own property across electrical grid. I mean, there are so many issues with this kind of gray zone conflict. And I believe truly that a lot of this kind of migrant warfare strategy that is part of it, whether it's transnational criminal organization, the other lines of effort, that's all part of it. And we just need to wake up to that and realize that we have to check that before something really bad happens. Absolutely. With that said, I have another appointment and I got to bounce.
Yes, sir.
But
hey, Jonathan, I appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you for everything you do. I know you're a busy guy, and you know what? Just keep fighting strong for Texas and for the United States. And thank you again for your service.
Yeah, no, thank you for your service, and really appreciate the opportunity. And keep going, man.
Yeah,
let's go. Let's go.
Thanks, brother.
All right.
Well, there you have it. The General Counsel of Citizens Defending Freedom, Jonathan Hullihan, a former commander in the U.S. Navy. He's a former JAG officer, and this guy here is he's a very bright mind and a very squared away, great American. I mean, I'm talking salt of the earth, great American, and I'm honored to not only call him a friend, but a brother as well. Folks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the program. It has never been easier to listen and engage with this podcast. We're on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We've been having a lot of fun on TikTok lately. Twitter and LinkedIn. Simply search Today with Tally. Also learn more about me and my personal story, and perhaps even get my new book at briantally.com. That's briantally.com. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for the Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Tally. Good night. Semper Fi. God bless.